So good morning. We're going to do a little walkabout on the final portion of the grove. This will be the southwest portion, and so we'll look at all the trees we looked at last year about this time of year, and hopefully there'll be a lot of things that are different and interesting on this particular tour. Miscommunication. This really should be taller and have a lot more leaves than it does now, but it'll grow. Basically, this is arbicola, and I like to not have to look at the smudge pots. We still haven't done anything with them. At some point, there'll be some sort of historical monument somewhere or something, but anyway, they're still here. Also, a lot of clay pots from the former owners. Our rosy gold tree's gotten bigger, you might have suspected, but it has a few fruit on them, but it didn't have the early fruit. Sometimes rosy gold will fruit in March, and this is not March. That one is, but we do have little fruit as well as some on the top of the tree too, as well as the larger fruit. So of course this is lemon meringue, and it doesn't look like a very good year for this particular tree. I'm seeing empty bloom spikes. I'm sure there's something somewhere on the tree that has set fruit, but I'm not seeing it. Here's our coconut cream, and tell it's leaning south. That's because the hurricane winds from Irma were coming from mostly the south, well, the southeast, but it was protected a little bit by the building here. Tree seems perfectly healthy, and we've got a little bit of fruit that's forming. And here's bay rum, and we got a lot of flowers on bay rum, and it's related to Pitomba and Grumichama. Those flowers look quite similar. The petals here are a lot smaller than the ones on those other two trees, but definitely a lot of similarities. This is one of our avocado trees, and got a lot of flowers forming here. We've got a little bit of small fruit. This tree, as well as all of our avocado trees, were completely non-productive after the hurricane because the hurricane blew down every fruit. So it's sort of the downside of having a late hurricane in Florida. Here's a little almond bush that it's not a fruit tree or anything, but it does have a wonderful smell. This is one of our Valencia Pride mangoes. All seems to have fruit, even though we added a lot of fill after we planted it. So the trunk is actually about 2 feet. No, it's probably about 2 feet before the roots start. The trunk is buried a little bit. Cinnamon tree doesn't look too great. That's also because of the hurricane. It just blew off a lot of leaves, and it's recovering, but it's slow recovery. This, of course, is our royal palm, and we've got some climbing orchid here. It hasn't really established, and I've got plans to use this trunk for something else, so maybe next time we do a walkabout you'll see something different on this. I don't want to ruin the surprise right now. So let's go back and start again. The next row. Okay, let's go look at some more trees. So here's a recent Oh, big frog. Recent project. This was another seedling of the Walkabout, and it's pretty good fruit. Not a great fruit, but also the branches started up really high, like at least I think they're about 8 feet up before it started branching. Of course, that doesn't make it easy to pick. So my goal is to have like one branch of this original variety and then top work the rest of the shoots that come out. And that will make it a lot easier to pick and also give us a better supply of some of the new varieties. This here, I'm not sure if it's a seedling of this one or just sprout out from the roots, but we cut off the tallest branch, and so that we wouldn't have, you know, really tall seedling or whatever. Probably top work that. This provides a little bit of shade from the strong sun for the new shoots that will be forming, and so next year this should look a lot different. You get a better view with that tree out of the way, but this is the tree that was twisted by Hurricane Wilma, and we had to cut it back because the bark had loosened from the wood. And so anyway, this is Juliet here, and we have some best up top, and also we have sweet tart. So this is at least 3 varieties that we'll pick this season. Here's a Namdok Mai tree. One of our jackfruit trees. Here we go. It's a different place it's forming jackfruit this year. It usually forms it on the trunk, but here we've got 3 jackfruit and some more possible forming. This is China. Those get pretty darn big, and it's been a very popular variety. I'm getting wet here. Rained a little bit earlier today. This is Golden Pillow, I believe. The tree really looks like it's suffering, but it's making fruit. Definitely need to thin a lot of this fruit so it doesn't overwhelm the tree, but yeah, very popular variety also. Here's Longan that we cut back a lot, and I'm not sure when it's going to fruit next. Here is lychee. This is red ohia lychee, and it is a lot smaller than it was last year. We trimmed some frangipani. We've been giving away some cuttings of that, and so this is our little secret stash. We keep filling the container out front so people can take them if they want. And here's a black sapote tree. It's this is north side, so it doesn't have as much fruit on it, and we just recently took out a Mamey apple tree here. That was shading this entire side, so there's not as much fruit on this side either. But once you get to the south side, there's a lot more fruit. Just the end of the season for black sapote. I think we'll have it for a couple more weeks. But at this stage, you do get some fruit, and you know, this is a very small fruit, but we have some bigger fruit. And then we also have the flowers, which I just think they're very unusual looking. So we'll now do the giant loop of this whole area, and so let's go start at our starting position. Now we're going to do the big loop, and there's lots of changes on this part. course, this looks pretty much the same. Yeah, concrete. The white sapote. I don't see any flowers or fruit on it right now. We do have flowers on this Lula avocado. And little avocados too. Yay! Those should be ready in about November. Another Lula avocado. So this is the other side of our red ohia lychee, and you know, all of this has been trimmed. We did leave 1 or 2 branches, and this branch up here looks like some of those shoots might be flowers. Of course, it's May, so it's not particularly good news that they're flowers, but it's not bad news either. You know, there is a small chance that there'll be something that's edible that develops there. It would be nice if it happened a couple months ago, though. And then we have a lot of area that grass is not growing here, and that's because there was a mamey apple that we took out. It was a very dense tree, hard to control, and you know, shading both the lychee and the black sapote. So we, you know, cut it down and actually put the little kiddie pool on top of the stump, so hopefully it doesn't sprout out. This is, we have the other side of the longan here. This is a tree that we need to keep you know, fairly short, because it will you know, sort of break in the wind. This particular one, we already had a problem with it splitting the trunk, but it's still growing, and so looking good. This is our little allspice. Not very much bigger than last year probably, but it is plugging along, so someday it will be a real tree. This is moringa with a vine from the neighbors that smells a lot like onion and garlic, but it's a pretty vine. It just smells like onion garlic, and it seems to like growing all over the trees here. We have more bay rum in flower, and then a whole bunch of mango seedlings. Some of these seedlings we've started grafting on. We've had a very dry winter, so some of these grafts didn't take. Like this one, for instance, didn't take. But then we have good news over here. This one looks very good. All this is the new growth, and that one is Chauncey. So what I will do is take off some of these leaves, probably in stages. I'm interested in Chauncey because it's supposed to be more cold tolerant. So I will prepare some graft wood from some of this, and so that way it will be less likely to break off in the wind, and also we will be able to have some potted plants of that variety. A lot of things are growing in here. I'm smelling a lot of garlic because of the vine when I walk through it, and you know, we don't particularly want palm here. This is I forget the name of this. Har brought some cuttings over, and they managed to root even though we didn't intend to have them root. But it's an attractive plant, and there is edible seeds inside of these pods. They taste a little bit like peas and onions, or peas and garlic together. And these are really little ones, but you know, they do get bigger and they are edible. You don't want to eat them for your only food source. It's not, you know, like 10% of what you eat is okay, but after that it can interfere with some of the, I think it's the absorption of calcium or something. But anyway, pleasant little thing, and sort of an odd, this is an odd mishmash because we had this huge mango tree here that was shading this whole area, and the neighbors had really big trees too, and they were shading this area, and now there's a lot of sunshine because we really cut back our mango tree and they cut back a lot of their tall stuff. So these seedlings will probably be top work to different varieties. So we started that project, well, I guess we might as well just get wet and go the tough way here, but we can show you what our projects have been. So here's a random papaya growing. Unfortunately, it's male because you can tell that from these clusters of flowers. So it's a nice tree. But here starts some of our grafting projects. Not real sure what happened to that one. Doesn't look like it. I think that the rubber band must have gotten ripped off or something. So I'm not sure if that one's going to take because it's not really secured. This was a grafting project from, I think, 2 weeks ago. And so that's a little bit too young to not be secure on that particular thing. But you might notice that we have very large mulch here. These chunks of the tree are just so darn heavy that we let them rot here. You know, eventually they'll either rot down to nothing, or they will just get so light that we can move them somewhere else. But it's sort of a losing battle, or at least a waste of energy to do it now. So here we have some more grafting in this. Oh, there we go. There's this. We have one here. That's sort of a side cleft, or maybe a bark graft there. And then this is a top cleft here. And everything's so wet from the rain this morning. Glad to get the rain, but I think I'm having a shower with this tour. Towel should be ready for me at the end or something. So this walkabout's being a little more challenging than others because of having this obstacle course. But anyway, grafted a few things here. You know, basically had a lot of graft wood that came in suddenly, and we had to find places to put it. So we went to this area because there's just a lot of growth from recent drastic cuts to the trees. Graftwood was not prepared the way I normally do, so I'm really not sure how successful it will be, but we have put on whatever we could, wherever we could. So there's a few there, and let's see if I can get over here. It's nice when all these chunks of wood are slippery because of the rain. But here's another one over here, and this whole branch has some, you know, I think it's about 10 different grafts here, but you just have to take my word for it because there's a lot more to show you than just this, but basically the concept is we have all of these roots in the ground and we have graft wood, so try and take advantage of those roots and to have a quick source of the varieties that we had graft wood for. So not sure how it's going to turn out, but we're hopeful. So we've got a lot of seedlings still in this area, and this one happens to be fruiting. I think it's for the first time, so I don't want to cut this back. It was growing rather horizontally to get to sunlight this way, and so obviously after it fruits I'll cut it back and so that it doesn't take up quite so much space. But I want to know what this fruit tastes like before I cut it back, because it might be a couple of years before it fruits again. So this one could be cut back. This whole area though is full of seedlings, and most of the taller ones we cut back a lot. This particular one in the back is very tall, and on the very top of the tree it has flowers. I don't know if it's setting fruit or not, but if it sets any of that fruit, it's going to stay big until we taste the fruit, and then it will become a lot shorter. You might notice that there's little shoots coming out of here. This also was part of our big grafting project. Har did a lot of this grafting, and I did some because it was, you know, suddenly getting a whole bunch of graft wood. You just have to have like all hands on deck or whatever. So this is Malda, and have a Malda down there. So at least one of the Maldas is taking. We have something else over here. It's white Alfonso. And so, yeah, this is the way I've been marking things recently, is to write on the stems or the bark. And of course, when it starts sprouting out, just take those out. You don't need the energy diverted from you know, the shoot, the scion that you want to feed. So take those out. But it's when you write on the stem or the bark, you have several months before it fades, and there's practically no risk of losing the tag. Like if you put a regular tag on it, sometimes they disintegrate, you know, they will fall off the tree or get blown off the tree or whatever. So anyway, that works for me. You know, here's another one. Basically anything that was at a good stage when we had the graft wood, we put the grafts on these trees. So yep, we'll see how that turns out. Here's another avocado tree. I don't have a name for this one. One of these, though, I have two side by side, and one of them is a really, really good avocado. And so I'm going to try to find out if it's a new variety or a named variety. So anyway, again, we lost all of our avocados last year because of Hurricane Irma, so we are really looking forward to avocados this coming year. This used to be very tall, and you see a lot of shoots coming out here. We needed to make it more reachable, and it's really good news that so much fruit has formed lower down, even with that very drastic trimming. And of course, here's another avocado tree. It's there's a lot of flowers. Not seeing much fruit on this one. The timing of flowers is a little different for a lot of varieties of avocado, and but looks like we'll have a good crop here also. So here's a little persimmon tree. Planted that when it was leafless. Oh no, it did have some leaves, and then they colored up beautifully and dropped, and now we have new leaves. So I grafted jackfruit. Yeah, this is China, which we saw at the beginning of this tour, and This is now at the bottom of the hill, so it should be a better location for jackfruit, because jackfruit likes more moisture than our sandy hill can provide. So hopefully that will really get rolling soon. So here's a little miracle fruit that we put in. It was in a pot with about this much soil, and it's lots happier having soil, and it actually has little teeny flowers, or right there, I think they're emerging. So their flowers are very small on this particular bush, and so you really have to look carefully for them, but it makes a ton of fruit, a ton of small fruit. And here we have bananas, look gorgeous in the morning light. I'm looking forward to these bananas. A lot of times not too many of them ever get sold because, you know, I like them a lot. But anyway, this is a great place for banana because, again, bottom of the hill gets more moisture, and they do need a lot of water to grow. And of course food and nutrients move down with the water. Here's Walkabout, which was a challenging tree to plant because it was in a 100-gallon pot for a long time. And so we trimmed back the plant a lot and had to get a lot of the roots and soil off in order to transplant it because it was too darn heavy without equipment. But it's coming back great, and so hopefully we'll have some fruit in 2019. And here's our carambola transplant, and of course it's got a lot of new leaves and such. It won't, you know, if we're lucky we'll get a few fruit in, you know, like December or January or something, but probably 2019 will be the time for this particular tree to shine. Here's another banana, and since this area is fairly protected by trees on all sides and at the bottom of the hill and a building nearby, I thought it was possible that the particular plant that had a bunch of bananas on it when Hurricane Irma struck might survive. And so I left it up and it fell down. But we have these two other plants here in the mat, and they are just about the size where they'll send out a flower and start producing bananas. So anyway, looking forward to those also, even though it's months away. Then we have a couple of southern blush mangoes here. They have a lot more sunshine this year than they've had in the past, and I'm seeing a little bit of fruit set on this one at least, so possibly we'll get some southern blush from this area. This is best mango, and right up here we see quite a bit of fruit in this one area. Most of the tree doesn't have fruit, but that's at least we'll be able to taste best this year. And this is a variety that I'm eager to taste because I don't believe I've tasted this yet. This comes from this tree here. And so of course I want to taste the fruit, see if it's worth keeping, and if it's not worth keeping, this is going to be root stock for other varieties. This is the remains of a variety that wasn't up to snuff. It was okay, but I didn't want to propagate okay mangoes. I want to have really good mangoes. And so I cut that one way back and grafted other varieties onto this stump. And a lot of these varieties are, I got graft wood from interesting seeds. I sprouted the seeds, and then as soon as it was old enough to use for graft wood, I put it on here so it would grow quickly and also hopefully produce quickly. A lot of times when you graft a seedling onto another plant, it forms fruit faster than it would on its own roots. So, you know, we've cut a lot of this stuff back, but, you know, always I'm looking for new varieties to form from the smaller plants and such. But this one is a pretty good plant, pretty good variety as I recall. But here this is a grafted variety because I, you know, want some sure things every once in a while. So every once in a while I will graft onto these seedlings. This one I put Big Jim on, so that's going to be a fairly big tree, but I wanted Big Jim in 2 different places. And here we have Duncanson, which I think is probably a child of Duncan, has a lot of similarities, but the fruit are much bigger and have a little bit of fiber. So we've got that. We've got a little bit of fruit forming here. But then we get to my favorite part of this whole area. And basically, these first few trees I put in, you know, like I think about 2 years ago, maybe not even that. But I grafted other varieties onto them. So next year we should have some production on these trees. These first couple are sweet tart, and then I also did sea crest. And so I've got a couple trees of sea crest, and then I decided to continue this mango hedge all the way to where the other one begins. And so there's a lot of small trees. This one is a seedling. I'm not sure what kind of seedling it is, but this one was probably a turpentine rootstock, and I grafted an interesting new variety, or a sprouted seed from a new variety onto it. And I did that with a lot of these plants in this area. So you know, I'm hoping next year we'll have some fruit to taste and see if these are really good. I'm really hopeful because it's you know, the new varieties that I planted and used for graft wood were really good. So hoping for some fun new varieties from this, yeah. And then, you know, in between, when I ran out of the larger trees, are just some sprouted seeds. So once they get big, I'll graft something onto them. And yeah, this is another case where I've grafted, and this is a new variety, hopefully a good one. This is just a seedling. But this is also a graft. You know, the story's pretty much the same. They're establishing well, and no action for this year on these grafted seedlings, but hoping that 2019 is going to be a banner year for them. So there's a half dozen more trees like this along in this area. And plans for this part of the grove, this is probably the area that is undergoing the most change right now. Yes, we took out a tree and such, but we cut back that huge Hayden tree up near the house, and that's going to be like a nursery tree for all sorts of varieties there. And then we have all those seedlings that will become rootstock for other varieties. And then we're using a lot of this area at the bottom of the hill for planting now. You know, yes, it was flooded for 3 weeks a long time ago, like in the early 2000s. But, you know, with a lot of viewer support and suggestions and, you know, a little bit of thinking, I've decided that we can just plant there and things will grow probably pretty quickly and well. And if it happens to flood, some of the plants will survive, some of them won't. But in the meantime, we'll be able to get, you know, some fruit out of that one area. But it's been a beautiful morning, and I hope that you've enjoyed this tour. Right now, because of the early morning rain, I am soaking wet. So I am looking forward to getting into some dry clothes. Hope you have a great day.